you ever felt stuck in a life filled with shoulds, instead of living authentically from a place of purpose and freedom? Today, we're exploring how healing from abuse, stepping out into alignment in your career, and embracing what you truly want can lead to a life of fulfillment. So welcome back to It's Your Story to Tell. I'm your host, Megan Babcock, and joining us again is Allison Steinke, who is going to share a little bit more about how she broke free and found healing and discovered her passion for helping others. Allison, welcome back.
Thank you, Megan, for having me again.
Oh, you're so welcome. If you did not hear Allison on our episode before, I'd love for you to just stop here, go back and check out Allison's story, because she talks a little bit more in depth about how things from her childhood led into the way she saw things in the world, how the beliefs that she had about herself, and how it led her into unhealthy relationships. So Allison, tell us about how you moved from this place of recognizing that this marriage was abusive to where you've been doing the work and now you're coming alongside of people.
Yeah, so I realized that my marriage was indeed abusive and that I was dealing with some form of a narcissist. And so I started to I've spent countless hours learning about narcissism from psychologists, trying to figure out how can I make this marriage work? I felt like I needed to stay for the kids, that obviously the children are the priority and they needed to have a happy and healthy home. And then I ultimately ended up leaving for the kids. And there was that period of real grief, not necessarily because I had lost that person in my life, but because I had lost that idea of a healthy home life. You know what? My home is so much more peaceful now than it was. It's not the traditional family anymore, but we have each other. And it's a happy, healthy place where my kids are learning respect because I didn't have boundaries and I let him walk all over me and treat me disrespectfully. And that's what they got to see. And so that's what, some of them were starting to model with their siblings. So I'm very thankful for my older children and the people in my life who have stepped up and helped to teach my children a better way. And I'm thankful that, we have the family that we do.
What you just shared there is so powerful because you took personal responsibility. You were in a situation, you cannot change the other person. You had to have boundaries and you had to protect yourself and protect your children. But you realized that there were things that were allowing you to find yourself in these relationships and even impacting the way you parent. And that also is very similar in the journey that I have been on. We talked about our fathers and their impact on the way we see the world and the way we interact. And I know it was really hard for me when I recognized that I was carrying these wounds into my parenting, and that was impacting my children. And, if you are a parent, there is no perfect parent out there. I realized my parents were doing their best and I was doing my best. Allison, you were doing your best. But when you know better, you can do better, right? And so it's all about how we can learn from our experiences. And I know it's really hard when you're in survival mode to get curious about the pain. I know for me, it felt like if I start exploring this, I don't know if I'll get out of bed. Like, how am I going to function? And my nervous system was telling me, this is not safe. Do not go there. And what I had to learn was how to comfort myself, to self-soothe, to learn coping strategies to allow me to sit in that discomfort. There's a book out that I love. It's called The Obstacle is the Way. And I really had to press into those experiences to be able to gain the knowledge and understanding of what it was actually creating. And as I began that journey for myself, much like you were sharing, It allowed me to show up differently for my kids and provide them with new experiences and the way to be resilient for themselves and to learn how to heal, because they were wounded by me. They were wounded by the relationship. And that can have long lasting impact. Have you seen that your work on yourself is impacting and kind of breaking this cycle in your own family?
Yes. And I get emotional
Yay!
saying that, but yes. And I also carry guilt over the things that I've apologized to my oldest for, the way I parented him as a child when he was younger. And he's like, Mom, that doesn't impact me. It's okay, but I know there's more work to be done. There's always more work to be done, right? But yeah, no, I see that now. I see the changes in my kids, and some of these unhealthy ways of dealing with things are being changed in my home.
You're breaking generational cycles. And I just want to acknowledge you. That is hard work, right? We're thinking of things that have been passed down, passed down. And not only that, it changes the way we think, the way we see our worlds, and even physically how we respond. Our body responds and it impacts our genetics. We now know that now with the studies of epigenetics. So what you are doing is gifting your family an entirely new legacy. As part of your journey, you were in training to be a holistic nutritionist and health coach. Tell me a little bit about how that impacts your own journey. You've got the emotional side and you have the physical side. So tell me a little bit about how those two go together and how you utilize your personal life experience along with your training to support others on this journey.
Well, the physical and the emotional side are just so closely connected. So I became certified a few years ago, 3, 4 years ago, and I did a bit of coaching, but I felt like a hypocrite because I was overweight. I was struggling with food as a way of coping with the trauma. Um, I couldn't sleep very well at night. I thought it was, I'm getting older, there's hormones, whatever. But as soon as I left my husband, you know what? I could sleep through the night. And there was that period of intense grief. But when I started to come out of that, I said, I can't control who my children's father is, but I can give my kids one healthy parent. So that was really a conscious decision in my starting place in my accelerated healing. Um, and I broke free from the food addiction, started losing weight. When I said, what do I need to do to be healthy? So I feel so much better. I'm so much nicer when I sleep. So I said, sleep's a priority. Like, I'm going to get 7 hours isn't enough for me. I need 8 hours of sleep. I'm going to get 8 hours of sleep. And I try very hard to do that. And exercise makes me feel so much better about myself and about life. And when things get really hard, uh, when bad things happen, I have to exercise. And it helps. I mean, it helps regulate your nervous system and brings down the cortisol levels and uh, makes you healthy. And I mean, the list goes on and on.
You think about fight or flight, right? The reason we have it was survival, to be able to run from a predator. And so when your body goes into fight or flight, if you can give it that exercise, if it's just a few minutes, it really allows you to utilize that burst of the energy.
Yeah, yeah. And exercise has become a form of therapy, my favorite one. Um, yeah, and onto the subject of exercise, a lot of these habits are not just discipline, especially for those of us who are neurodivergent. Um, it's finding what fits into your life, finding an exercise you love, finding a time of day that works, finding your motivation. I mean, motivation only goes so far because some days we're just plain not motivated, right? Like you're saying, and then that it's always that conscious choice. The approach that I take in my coaching is that everybody is unique. Everyone has their own story. Um, it's a safe space with no judgment, and I meet people where they're at. and then we find what works for them. I don't go and say, you need to do this and you have to exercise these many minutes and this is what you have to eat. No, I teach what's healthy, and then I help my clients find what works for them that's going to be sustainable change in their life. And I also have a big focus on mindset, because I always had a really bad mindset. Um, my dad used to call me the frustrated entrepreneur because I was always coming up with business ideas and then coming up with reasons why I couldn't do them, why they weren't going to work. Because I had a fixed mindset. I'd come up against a problem and I'd say, oh, it's not going to work. Oh, well, can't do that. Um, and then, when you have someone in your life who for decades is telling you, you did this wrong, why'd you do this? You laugh too loud, whatever it is, and you're constantly hearing that, it was like, like little angels in the cartoons. There's like a devil and an angel on your shoulder. It's like I had that voice. I mean, I had my own voice, and then I had his voice on top of it telling me everything that was wrong with me. You're so dumb. Why he didn't use those words, but I ended up using those words. So I knew that I had two choices after the separation. I could sink or I could swim. And what was it going to take for me to swim? I had to change the way I thought. I had to reframe my thoughts. I had to take every struggle that I came up against and say, okay, what can I learn from this? What's the opportunity here? Was it 2 Corinthians 5, I think, it says, take every thought captive. I had to take every thought captive and say, no, this thought is not helpful. We're going to replace it with something that is helpful, that is life-giving, that will help me grow as a person and in my career. As a health coach, you you have to grow personally and in your career. They're very closely intertwined. Yeah, like I can't smoke cigarettes and be 80 pounds overweight and then tell people how to be healthy, right? So and I'm thankful for that, honestly, because that has been so important in my healing journey.
I love that you brought up that scripture and just what you were saying, because when I was at my breaking point and I was finally ready to do something different. So if you're at that point, if you're at a breaking point where you're just like, I'm done, I've been there, and it was a pivotal moment in my life. But in that moment, I'm like, I surrender. And surrender is hard for me. For me, that is a place of fear because of abuse, because I experienced a rape, that having no control feels so unsafe. And so surrender, and doing something different, it just feels very uncomfortable for me and scary. And so I was desperate and cried out, God, like, I'll do anything. I'm ready to face all of this stuff in my past because it can't be any worse. Like, I don't want to go on at this point in my life. And so I have to do something different. And that was the first scripture that came to my mind. You've got to take every thought captive. And I was like, okay. And then what? It's then through the renewing of your mind that you experience transformation. And so from that scripture about renewing your mind, I was like, okay, I want to do this. How do I measure these thoughts? And he gave me the fruits of the Spirit and said, you need to measure your thoughts because this is from me: love, joy, peace, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and self-control, all of which were not part of my life. I wasn't speaking those things over myself. My environment, everything was the exact opposite. And that negative, critical talk that you're sharing. And so I started to take my thoughts captive, which I joke because I'm like, you don't realize how many thoughts you have until you start taking them captive. And then you're like, no wonder I feel crazy in my head because it is such a mess. But as I started to do that, I recognized patterns. And they really came back to not feeling I was worthy, not seeing my value, and just because I was created by God and placed here that I had value. And so then I was able to start speaking truth and finding scriptures and affirmations. And as I started that journey, I didn't even believe the words I was saying. But what's crazy about our mind is it doesn't know reality from what we tell it. They're one and the same. And so as I began to just speak those words and making that conscious choice, I actually wore a bracelet that had the fruits of the spirit on it because I needed a reminder for myself of this is what I'm doing. And over time, I started to see that change in the way I saw the world. And I was going, like you said, from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, moving out of victimhood, because I would never have said I was a victim. I was very successful in my career because I was striving for approval from everyone else because everything else was falling apart. So you wouldn't know that. My family looked perfect because I was showing you what I wanted you to see. But as I began doing this work, my life became more and more aligned with that desire of my heart. So I love that you shared that really practical way. It's not easy. And that's why having a coach and someone alongside of you to help model it and give you tips. And when you're having a really bad day, the clients I work with, they can text me and tell me what is the lie that they're hearing. Because on my journey, I was gifted a domestic abuse advocate when DHS got involved. And I was very fortunate because it's so rare that someone is available to come along with them. Julia was my angel. She was a gift from God because she allowed me to start doing this work with support. And it really changed the direction of my life. And it's my honor and passion to come alongside of people and help them reframe those mindsets because the obstacle is us. And you're living proof of what's possible when you start to recognize reality and accept it. And then make these conscious choices to create a different life. So we got connected through an opportunity called Aya Ring, which is owned by the company Hive Health. And I am on the leadership team for that. And we got connected. You came on as a coach and we'll be launching in 2025. What is your thought on how this ring is going to support the work that you do with your clients? How would having something like the Aya ring in your own journey supported you?
I remember about 5 years ago, I don't know, I don't know how I was so unaware of my body, but I remember just thinking, I'm tense all over. Like I'm always tense 100% of the time. I'm clenching muscles somewhere. And if I had had the ring back then, and even now I find myself too, it's a good idea to stop and do body scanning, where am I tense? Sometimes I still hold tension in my body without thinking about it. So even now, I think the ring will be very helpful to just alert me like, hey, something's going on in your body. And then you can make that connection between your body and your mind, your emotions. There's the AI tool that connect what your coach has talked about with you. Things come up so it's not just the biofeedback. There's so much more to it, right? I'm excited to try it, and I think it's going to be so helpful for everyone who wears it.
Yeah. Well, the hardest part, I think, in the journey is the self-awareness. It's really hard to develop in fight or flight. And so by the ring picking up these biometric data points and presenting the information before you're in that stress moment. And then, like you said, using the coaching, putting resources in front of you to help you regulate your nervous system so that you don't move into that fight or flight where you can't consciously choose. It's going to be so powerful and accelerate people's journeys. I am really excited to continue to partner with you and see how this helps you in your journey, but how it really impacts what you're doing with those that you serve. Thank you so much for being so open and vulnerable and sharing your story of how you broke free from these expectations that had been placed on you by people, even by yourself, and found healing, and how you are making a difference by coming alongside of people. I will have Allison's information in the show notes so that you have a way to get connected with her. And you can also check out information on the Aya Ring that launches to the public coming up in early 2025. Thank you, Allison, for being here with me. Listeners, again, please like and share this so that more people can find healing and transformation in their lives.
Thank you, Megan. I love what you're doing. Like you said, you and I align so much in our missions and our passion and our stories. And thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. The pleasure is all mine. Take care.